I never thought I'd end up here, telling a story like this on a stranger's forum, but honestly, I need someone to hear me out. Maybe even just to get it off my chest. It's about betrayal, deep, gut-wrenching betrayal, and how I turned the pain into something else, something I never saw coming. My wife and I had been married for 5 years. We weren't perfect, but we were comfortable. She was the kind of woman who could make the dullest dinner feel like a special occasion. I like to think I knew her well. Our life was routine, but it worked until it didn't. It started during my cancer treatment. I was diagnosed about a year ago and everything changed overnight. The surgeries, the chemo, the endless hospital visits. It was exhausting physically and emotionally. She was supposed to be my rock, my support. I clung to her, grateful for her presence. But underneath that warmth, something felt off. Small things like her avoiding my eyes when she thought I wasn't looking, or the way she'd suddenly be busy when I needed her most. I brushed it aside. I told myself she was stressed, just overwhelmed. It was easier than admitting I might have been alone in this. Then came the day I found the evidence. I was home early from a chemo session, my body drained, my mind foggy. I decided to surprise her, bring her flowers. I always did that during my treatments, hopping it'd lift her spirits. I slipped into the apartment feeling lighter, thinking about how to make her smile. But as I approached the bedroom, I caught sight of something I'll never forget. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and there they were. My best friend Mark was pressed against her, his hands gripping her waist. Her face was buried in his neck and his lips were pressed to her collarbone. I froze, the breath catching in my throat. I could feel my stomach drop, that sickening twist that refuses to go away. My palms were slick with sweat. I didn't make a sound, but I saw enough. The way they looked at each other, like they were caught in some secret no one else mattered. I saw the way her fingers curled into his shirt, the softness in her eyes that I'd never seen before. I backed out slowly, my head pounding and my heart hammering. So loud I thought it might burst. I didn't need to hear their words, the scene was enough. I took a slow, shaky breath, tried to process what I'd just seen. My mind kept replaying it over and over. Every detail was burned into my memory, her tangled hair, his smirk, their shared laughter lingering in the air. I knew then I couldn't pretend anymore. That moment hit harder than any of the chemo treatments. It was like my body had been hollowed out, left with only raw, aching pain. I spent the next few days trying to pretend it didn't happen, but the image haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. Every time I saw her, I felt like I was dying all over again. That betrayal was worse than the cancer. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let this go. But I also knew that deep down I wanted revenge, not just to hurt her, but to make her see what she'd lost, what she threw away. So I started planning. I didn't want to be the guy who just walked away, broken and defeated. No, I wanted to make her regret it. I wanted her to see the mess she'd made, see that I wasn't the same person anymore. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of their messages, emails, even copies of their photos together. I wanted her to know I'd seen everything, that I wasn't blind to her lies. I kept it all hidden at first, stored in a secure folder on my laptop. I didn't want her to suspect. I wanted her to think I was still the same guy she'd brushed off during my treatments. But I was planning something much more calculated, something cold but effective. It wasn't about petty revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about finally turning the tables. I felt like I'd been dying slowly and this was my chance to breathe again. The question was, how far would I go? Would I confront her? Or would I let her watch me walk away, broken but finally free? I wasn't sure yet. All I knew was that she'd crossed a line and I was done pretending she hadn't. So I sat back, took a deep breath, and started putting the pieces in motion. I had a plan. It was simple, clear, cruel, and final. But first, I had to see how she'd react when she realized I knew everything. That's when the real game started. And trust me, it's only just beginning. I spent the next few days in a fog, honestly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face pressed against his, that look in her eyes like she was tasting something forbidden. It felt like a punch to the gut every single time. I was angry more than I'd ever been, but I also felt a strange clarity. I knew I had to act, but I didn't want some messy, impulsive confrontation. I needed to be strategic. I started by reinforcing my evidence, screenshots of messages, photos, little things I'd come across during the days I was too weak to do much else. I kept everything on a secure drive that she didn't know about. I wasn't planning to make a scene just yet. I wanted her to realize I'd caught her, and I wanted her to feel the weight of it. The idea of her sitting there thinking I hadn't seen made me sick. I wanted her to understand that her secret was out, that I knew her game. Meanwhile, I kept pretending everything was normal. I'd come home from treatment, sit on the couch, watch TV, but inside I was boiling. I'd catch her glancing at her phone or trying to hide her smile when she thought I wasn't looking. That flicker of guilt, or maybe just fear, was enough to keep me going. I was building something, a plan, and I needed her to stay unaware until the right moment. One night I decided it was time. I wanted her to feel the tension, the pressure of knowing I knew. I sat her down in the living room, my hands clenched into fists, my heart pounding. I looked her right in the eyes and said, "I know what I saw, I know about Mark." Her face went pale like I'd punched her in the stomach. She tried to deny it, but I just shook my head, holding up my phone with all the evidence on the screen. She stammered something about being stressed, about it being a mistake, but I wasn't buying it. The shock in her eyes was satisfying. She knew she'd been caught. I could see it in her trembling fingers, the way her voice cracked when she tried to deny everything. The air felt thick, loaded with years of betrayal finally surfacing. I told her that I wasn't interested in a messy divorce or a big fight. I just wanted her to know I was done. Done pretending, done trusting her. Her eyes filled with tears and she begged for me to forgive her, to forget it, but I was already past that point. I leaned in and said, "You crossed the line and I plan to make you regret it." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I saw the flicker of fear in her face. Good. She deserved to feel small. That night I started laying out the groundwork for my revenge. I knew she'd try to hide her tracks, so I set up a few things. I planted a Bluetooth device in her phone's messaging app, nothing invasive, just enough to record her conversations. I knew she'd try to cover her tracks, but I wanted her to know I was always watching. I also sent a few anonymous emails to her friends, hinting that I knew about her affair. Let her sweat, let her wonder who might be watching her. I kept her close, though, because I wanted her to see that I was still there. I didn't leave her side, but I was different, calmer, colder. Every time she looked at me with those pleading eyes, I felt a strange satisfaction. I could tell she was starting to realize that I wasn't going to be the same man she'd once manipulated. I was already planning to turn her world upside down, and I wasn't going to stop until I saw her truly suffer. The thing is, I don't regret what I'm about to do. She broke my trust, cheated on me during my cancer fight, and made me feel like I was dying all over again. If I can make her feel even a fraction of that pain, then maybe I'll finally be able to breathe again. I don't want her to think she's getting away with it. Not this time. But I have to be careful. I need her to believe I'm still the same guy, just hurt and betrayed. So I keep my plan close, keep her guessing, and wait for the right moment. The next step is coming, and it's going to be as cold as my heart feels right now. When I finally pull the trigger, she's going to wish she'd never crossed me. And if she thinks I'm just going to walk away, she's dead wrong. This isn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It's about reclaiming what she stole from me. My trust, my dignity, my peace of mind. She might have broken me in ways I never thought possible, but I'm about to show her that I'm far from finished. The days that followed were like walking through a fog of calm, but underneath, a storm was brewing. I kept pretending everything was normal because that's what she expected. I would sit across from her at dinner, my stomach twisting, my palms sweaty. I watched her every move, every flicker of guilt or fear, trying to gauge how much she truly understood that I knew. While she went on about her day, I was busy sealing my plan, making sure every piece was in place. I'd spent hours tracing her phone's activity, listening to her recorded conversations, and noting the moments she slipped, the little lies she told herself to stay ahead. I knew she'd try to deny everything, but I wanted her to know I had her cornered. She'd been caught. And now it was only a matter of time. One evening when she was out of the house, I sat at my desk, reviewing the evidence for what felt like the 100th time. The proof was undeniable now. Her affair with Mark wasn't just a fling. It was a full-blown betrayal, and I had everything documented. I'd already sent a few anonymous emails to her friends, hinting at her infidelity. That had, of course, made her paranoid. She started checking her phone more often, her eyes darting around whenever I walked into the room. I had also planted a little device in her car that recorded her conversations whenever she talked on the phone. I knew she'd be suspicious if I outright accused her, so I was going to let her feel like she was losing control. She was starting to crack, and I loved the way it felt, powerful, even if it was bitter. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. I decided to push her a little further. During one of our usual conversations, I looked her right in the eyes and said, "You know I've seen everything, right? All those messages, those late-night calls. I wasn't just sick, I was dying, and I still am, but I'd rather die knowing I didn't get played for a fool." Her face went pale, but she tried to brush it off with a nervous laugh. "That's crazy," she whispered, voice trembling. "You're just imagining things." "No," I said coldly, "I have proof, and I'm not the only one. I've shared some of it, and I'm about to make sure everyone else knows too." I didn't need to specify who. I knew she'd understand I was serious. Her eyes flicked to her phone on the table, but I stepped closer, keeping my tone steady. "This is your last warning. Stop playing with fire or I'll burn down everything you care about." I saw her lips tighten, her nails digging into her palms. That's when she finally broke, eyes shimmering with tears. "Please, I didn't mean for it to turn out like this. I was weak, I guess. I was just so lonely, I didn't think you'd find out." That was her moment of weakness, but I wasn't about to fall for it. I leaned in and said, "You broke my trust during the worst thing I've ever gone through, my cancer. How do you think I felt when I found out you were with him? Every chemo session, I was just hopping for a chance to survive, and you were out there, living your little secret. Well, I'm tired of waiting. The game's over, and I'm about to change the rules." Her breath hitched, and she looked like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Just silent tears. I watched her, feeling a strange mixture of hatred and relief. I'd already started to plan my next move, one that would make her regret her choices for the rest of her life. I knew she'd try to deny everything to convince me she was sorry, but I didn't care. Her apologies wouldn't fix what she'd broken. I told her, "The thing is, I want to be gone from this house soon. Not just physically, but emotionally. I've been dead inside these past few days, and if I'm going to leave, it's going to be on my terms." Her eyes widened, realizing I was serious. The power I had over her now was intoxicating, even if it made my stomach turn. That night, I set the final pieces into motion. I arranged for her to find something. No, not just to find, but to stumble upon something that would knock her sideways. I wanted her to see it without me having to say a word. I swear I could feel the adrenaline rush, the cold thrill of justice. It was a little more than revenge. It was the end of a chapter, the start of something new for me. I knew she'd panic once she realized how exposed she was. I was prepared to reveal everything at the right moment, just enough to see her tremble, just enough to make her understand I wouldn't be back. I was done playing nice, but I wasn't reckless either. I'd planned this for days, and everything was set perfectly. The moment was approaching, and the best part, watching her squirm and knowing I held all the cards. I'd always been the good guy, the loyal husband, but now I had become something else. Something cold, calculated, and finally in control. I was about to show her what real betrayal felt like, only this time it was her turn to suffer. The countdown had begun. The next step was the confrontation, the moment she'd regret for the rest of her life. And I was ready. That evening I finally felt the weight of everything I'd been building up to lift slightly. I knew she was home, nervously packing, probably wondering what I knew, what I might do next. I'd left her trembling just enough to keep her on edge without giving everything away. I sat quietly in the living room, pretending to be absorbed in a book, but my mind was racing. Every detail of my plan, every possible outcome. I wanted her to feel like she was cornered, to understand that I was no longer the passive husband she thought she was fooling. I kept my eyes on her, watching her subtle nervous gestures, the way she kept checking her phone, the way her fingers trembled when she reached for her coffee mug. I knew the moment had to be right. Timing was everything. When she finally settled down on the couch, I decided it was time for the big reveal. I took a deep breath, feeling my heartbeat thumping in my ears, and then I slowly leaned forward. You know, I started casually. I've been watching everything, listening to, and I've got proof more than enough to make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. Her eyes darted to me and I saw that flicker of panic. Her face paled further, but she tried to mask it. "What are you talking about?" she asked, voice trembling. "Oh, I think you know exactly what I mean," I said. "You thought you could get away with this, with Mark. But I've got everything, screenshots, recordings, the works, and I'm done pretending you're innocent. I want you to understand that I'm not going to be your fool anymore. I'm not going to sit by and watch you destroy everything we had." Her lips parted, but she seemed stunned into silence. She looked down at her hands, shaking, trying to compose herself. I saw her lips quiver and I knew she was scared. Good, she should be. "I don't want to fight," I continued, voice low but steady. "But I will make sure everyone knows what you did. I've already reached out to some people. Friends, family. They're going to hear the truth, and when they do, you'll lose everything. Your reputation, your friends, maybe even your job. You thought you could keep your secret forever, but the truth always comes out." She looked up at me, tears pooling in her eyes. "Please don't do this. I made a mistake. I was weak. I was just lonely." "I don't care," I interrupted. "You think I want to hear your excuses? You betrayed me during the worst time of my life. You didn't just cheat." I paused, voice sharp. "You betrayed everything we had, all the vows we made. And I'm not going to let you get away with it." Her shoulders shook as she finally let the tears flow freely. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Please, I'll do anything, just don't ruin me." I shook my head, feeling a strange calm I'd never experienced before. "It's too late for apologies. The only thing left now is your reaction, because I've got one last thing for you." I pulled out the tiny flash drive I had hidden in my pocket. I held it up, watching her eyes widen in horror. "This," I said softly, "contains everything. Every message, every photo, every lie you told. I'm going to give it to the people I've contacted. And you're going to watch what happens when your world starts to crumble." I saw her breathe in sharply, her face white as a sheet. Her hands clutched her chest like she was trying to hold herself together. I met her gaze, icy but firm. "You should have thought about this before you crossed me. I'm done being the guy who turns the other cheek. I'll make sure you never forget what you did." She broke down then, sobbing uncontrollably. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. I knew this was just the beginning. The plan was set, and she was about to realize what betrayal truly meant. I slid the drive into my pocket, already feeling the power shift in my favor. What came next would be her downfall, and I'd be there, watching it all unfold. I'd finally get my revenge, not just to hurt her, but to reclaim what she took from me. I could feel my fists clenching as I sat back, waiting for the fallout. That satisfying moment when she finally understood that I wasn't just hurt, I was done being a victim. And as I watched her cry, I knew I'd never look at her the same way again, because the trust was shattered and now she was about to see what true consequences looked like. All I had to do was wait. The next move was hers and I was ready. The next morning I woke up feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The heaviness of the betrayal was still there, but something inside me had shifted. I'd set the wheels in motion, and I knew she couldn't escape the fallout now. I kept the flash drive hidden in my pocket, knowing I'd finally use it when the moment was right. Every nerve in my body was on edge, like I was standing at the edge of a precipice, ready to jump. She was still asleep when I got up. I watched her for a moment, her chest rising and falling quietly, her face pale and worn. There was a desperation in her eyes I'd never seen before, like she knew everything was about to change and she couldn't stop it. I knew I had to be careful. I'd come too far to screw this up now. I went into the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and took a deep breath. I needed to be cold, calculated. I couldn't afford any emotion clouding my judgment. This was the moment I'd been building toward. I had the evidence, the plan, and the resolve. All I needed was to execute it perfectly. I reached for my phone and sent a message to the few people I'd contacted yesterday, just a tease, letting them know the truth was about to come out. I told them to be ready. Now I waited. The anticipation was almost worse than the betrayal itself. About an hour later, she was up, looking anxious. She kept glancing at her phone, probably wondering what I'd done. I finally decided it was time. I called her into the living room, acting casual, but inside I was steeling myself for the inevitable chaos. "Look," I said, "you've made your choice, now I've made mine." I placed the flash drive on the table between us and looked her in the eye. "This contains everything. Every lie, every betrayal, every secret you thought you could hide. I'm giving you one last chance. You can come clean, tell me the truth, and maybe we can figure this out. Or I can finally let everyone see what you've been hiding." Her face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. It was a mistake. Just don't do this, please." I shook my head, my voice cold and unwavering. "It's too late. You had your chance and you threw it away. Now I'm about to show everyone the real you. I want you to understand this isn't about revenge anymore. It's about ending this charade. I've been sick, broken, and betrayed, and I deserve to be free of this lie." She looked at me desperately, her hands trembling, but I didn't flinch. I reached out, took the drive, and pressed it into her palm. "When you're ready, you can hand this over, or I will. Either way, the truth is coming out today." Her lips shook as she nodded, unable to speak. Her entire body looked defeated, like she knew her life was about to change forever. I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with cold resolve. This was my closure, my justice. As she cradled the drive, I turned away, watching her, knowing I'd finally taken the control back I'd lost for so long. I didn't need to scream or shout. I'd already made my statement. Now it was just a matter of letting everything unfold. I stepped out of the room and grabbed my keys. Today was the day I'd leave that house behind, the last piece of my old life. I handed her a small envelope. "This is what you're going to do next," I said. "Take the drive, give it to whoever you need to, and don't come after me." She looked at me with hollow eyes, silently accepting her fate. I gave her one last look, cold, final, and then I walked out the door, leaving her crying on the couch. The lock clicked behind me, sealing her fate. As I drove away, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I had finally done what I needed to do. The betrayal had cut me so deep I'd thought I'd never recover, but now I was free. Free from her lies, her betrayal, her cheating. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. And I knew I'd never let anyone do that to me again. Sometimes the pain is necessary for growth. The key is what you do with it afterward. I handed over the keys, and with a deep breath, I started a new chapter, one where I was finally in control. And that, I told myself, was the real victory. I drove halfway across town, the engine humming softly beneath me, but my mind was miles away. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of clarity, like I'd finally shaken off the weight that had been crushing me. The house I was leaving behind was a prison of lies and betrayal, and no matter how much I loved her once, she'd turned into a stranger. Maybe even someone I once cared for, but now just a ghost I needed to let go. I pulled into a small parking lot and stepped out, the cold air biting at my skin. I took a long breath, feeling the crispness settle into my lungs. I looked at the sky, cloudy, gray, like everything else in my life at that moment. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the small envelope I'd prepared earlier. The one with the evidence she'd handed me, along with instructions for what to do next. I hesitated for a second, then laid it on the windshield of my car. I knew she'd find it, probably sooner rather than later. I wanted her to see it all, to understand that her lies had consequences, that her betrayal wasn't something I'd forget or forgive. Not now, not ever. Turning my back to the car, I walked away, feeling a strange mix of liberation and emptiness. It was like shedding a skin I'd outgrown but hadn't realized was suffocating me. Every step felt lighter, and I let my shoulders relax for the first time in a long while. I'd fought through the storm, and I'd come out the other side, scarred, yes, but stronger. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew her world was about to implode, and I didn't want to be a part of that anymore. I had done what I set out to do. I'd finally reclaimed my dignity. I'd taken the power back from someone who had tried to destroy me. As I reached my car, I stared at the horizon. The sky was still gray, but somewhere just beyond it, I hoped there was a lighter day waiting. I thought about the future, about healing, about building a new life where trust wasn't a fragile thing I handed over to just anyone. I learned that sometimes betrayal is a brutal teacher, but it also teaches you your own strength. I slid into the driver's seat, took a deep breath, and turned the key. Before I drove off, I looked at the house one last time, a place that held nothing but memories I'd now leave behind. I pressed the accelerator, feeling the engine roar to life beneath me. The road ahead was anonymous, uncertain, but it was mine. I know it's going to take time, maybe a long time, to really heal from what she did. But I also know I'll be okay because I finally stood up for myself. I stopped being a victim of someone else's choices, and that's the real victory. Sometimes the hardest thing is walking away, but it's also the bravest, and I've done it. I might be broken, but I'm not defeated. I'm starting fresh with a clearer mind and a stronger heart, and I won't let anyone take that from me again.